You've probably heard this riff before. Or this one for that matter. 90s house and dance are full of interesting stab sounds. Let's check out these two in this video, how they were made, and some nerdy stuff that we can learn from them about sound design.
Y'all ready for this?
Just a quick thing up front, if you're looking for some cool chord stabs for house and classic house and things like that, I uploaded a little pack to my sample shop and you can find the link in the description of this video. Feel free to check that out. But let's now dive right in, and as most of you probably guessed correctly, this sound right here, or this riff, stems from Too Unlimited, Get Ready for This, a track that has been all over the place, played in many stadiums and things like that. And it kind of has this weird, quirky, synthy stab sound, right? Which sounds kind of cool, so you might be wondering, how did they create this sound? But they didn't actually create it from scratch themselves. If you listen to the stab in its original pitch, which is this, you realize, okay, this is actually an orchestra stab. And we exactly know where they have this orchestra stab from. There's a sample CD out there called 250 Disco Jingles. Let's have a quick listen to a part of that.
Most music. Music. You got it.
So yeah, kind of a quirky sample CD containing funky disco jingles. I think they were mainly meant for radio DJs who wanted to spice up their shows. And there are many cool samples in there, and one of them is this stab right here. So what Too Unlimited did, or the people who produced their instrumentals, is pick this part and throw that into a sampler, which I did as well. So without any processing or anything like that, you can get to this riff. But something kind of interesting happens to sounds if you pitch them around like that, and that's especially true for samples containing acoustic instruments or acoustic elements like vocals. And all of that is because of formants. And formants are kind of good to know about in general, and they're also relevant for the sound design of the second chord stab that we're going to take a look at, this one, which most of you probably recognized as the Landlord stab. And we're going to take a look at the sound design of that in a second. But I want to share some stuff about formants because they're really helpful for, or I use the concept and principle of them all the time to create chord stabs and things like that and give them character and a personal twist. So formants are kind of these frequency clusters which stay the same even if you change the note of an instrument that you're playing or the note that you're singing as a person. So an instrument has a shape and a size and things like that, and material. Based on that, you will have certain frequency clusters or frequency bands which are always kind of present and accented no matter what note you're playing or singing. And just a quick example that you probably know about, but it's good to repeat that stuff. Let's say we have a vocal. If we now take the same vocal thing and pitch it up by 7 semitones, it's going to sound like this. Kind of like a chipmunk, right? If you pitch this down, it's going to sound like a weird monster. But a singer could easily sing 7 semitones higher and still kind of have the same voice and the same character, right? And that's because of the shape of the throat and the shape of the person and everything, you will have these certain overtone structures. Let's take a quick look in Voxengo Span. So you see you have these clusters of frequencies, and if you pitch a sound around, all the frequencies are going to move up, or if you pitch it down, all the frequencies are going to move down. But if you sing a higher note or play a higher note on the same instrument, these frequency clusters usually stay the same. So we're kind of not doing that by pitching things around, which is why it sounds unnatural eventually. In the case of vocals, Ableton Live has warp modes, right? So you have a warp mode called Complex Pro, which gives you a formant slider that helps you to kind of keep those formants the same. So if we turn this all the way down, we would have the chipmunk at +7 semitones. But if we bring this to 100, it's going to try to restore those frequency bands and clusters, which now sounds more like the original singer. And if we open up Span again, just to have a quick look, you can see we're around 8K with this formant. And it's kind of trying to restore this, while at the chipmunk voice, it moves up all the way to 13K. So we're shifting that, and that doesn't usually happen. And in the case of instruments, you also kind of have this scenario where you have a certain shape of an instrument. So a ukulele, which is small, if you pitch that down, or if you record it and pitch it down, it's not going to sound the same as a normal acoustic guitar. And the grand piano sounds different than an upright piano. They have these different overtone structures, kind of different harmonics, but then different formants. Another place where you might have heard about formants is in the case of vowels. So we use formants or shape formants in order to communicate and create certain sounds and words. You can also do this in synthesis. So we have this free synthesizer called Helm right here, which has a formant filter. Just playing a C with a sawtooth wave. We're playing this. If we turn on the formant filter, it will now create different frequency clusters. And if we move this thing around, depending on where the cluster lands, it sounds like a different vowel to us. So that was in the context of speech. Now getting back to sound design and chord step design, we can kind of keep this principle of form and shifting in mind to create different cool textures and character in our sound. If we have a grand piano, for example, and play that at a very low pitch or playing low notes. Let's listen to that. This is just Ableton's grand piano. We can record that into an audio track. Let's do that real quick. If I now throw this into a simpler, I'm just going to do that like that. Okay. Maybe I'm going to normalize the volume so it's a bit louder. Okay, here we go. Let's listen to that. If we now pitch this up, the higher we go, the weirder the piano sound gets. Like, this doesn't sound like the chord played by a grand piano anymore. So just by recording something low and pitching it up, or maybe even recording it high and pitching it down, you can create different characters and different textures for your chord steps. And if you now layer some instruments and things like that and then pitch it around, it's going to sound interesting for sure. So that's a great approach to create some classic chord steps. Something, or like an instrument which already sounds a bit quirky and weird and funny, is a ClaV sound, especially if it comes from an FM synthesizer. So there are some ClaV presets for the DX7, for example, but there are many different ones out there. And you can record this to also have a cool character. And what I did here, let's compare two different chords. So this is just playing a G sharp minor with 2 octaves below. Let's listen to the ones here. So these are really high, and this is a bit lower. This already sounds quite a bit like the Landlord step, right? And it's actually said that the preset that was used comes from the chord 4B ClaV Ensemble. I haven't checked with Landlord personally, but that's kind of the story behind it. So you can get a ClaV sound like this. There are different synth ClaV sounds out there. And what I like to do here as well is record it pretty high. So we got that. And let's throw that into a simpler. Normalize the volume. So now we have this on here. This is what we recorded. If we pitch it down, this is what happens. So that's cool. Now we can use some processing, maybe bring out the spike a bit more. If you record something high and then pitch it down, you're going to miss some high end. So you might want to bring that in. You see, just some extra high end sounds amazing. So basically this process, you can also throw some chords on there, some processing, whatever you need. And I recorded the same thing before, added some delay. We have some reverb on here, and that's how I got to this chord step. So yeah, like I said, you can find some of my chord steps over in my sample shop, including this one actually. The link is in the description. I'd appreciate it if you check it out. Besides that, if you have any questions, feel free to let me know in the comments, and I'm looking forward to see you in the next video. Ciao.